pretty much on time. I want to introduce another returning friend of the Catholic Identity Conference. This is his second time speaking, and it kind of fits. I thought it was a nice fit with what we saw last night, where we have now members of the media who are so, I was going to say woke, and I don't mean that, but woke in a good sense, waking up to the Catholic thing and what's necessary. And I couldn't believe it one day when I heard our next speaker on Newsmax, in a very popular afternoon show, saying, "What in the world?" I wish I had the clip. I couldn't find it in time this morning. We said, speaking to hundreds of thousands of people in his audience, very mainstream audience, he says, "What is happening in Rome? What is the Pope doing? Is this even Catholic anymore?" Just one of the talking heads, on Newsmax, who was willing to really ask some questions that could have got him in a lot of trouble. Maybe he did, I don't know, but he's still there. And when I saw that, I immediately invited Chris Salcedo to come to the Catholic Identity Conference, because I took such hope, that we still have people like that who are willing to speak out in the media. We all get so tired and sick and tired of the media, but there is a growing number now of Catholics, Christians of course, but also Catholics, tradition-leaning, tradition-minded Catholics, even traditionalists in the media. And I really want to stress it. I know many of them, several of them myself. And so it's really, really encouraging when we talk about keeping hope alive and not just concluding that everything is all over and done, there's nothing we can do about it. To know that there are fighters, people who feel with just as much conviction as you and I have for the faith and for family and for life, that are out there with huge pulpits. And our next guest is one of those men who has the courage to speak the truth. He's had me on his show a couple of times. That's not what you do if you want to score popularity points in the media these days. And yet he has, and he's given us entree graciously to the Newsmax audience to tell our story as well, and to defend Christ the King and talk about the Latin Mass and things like that. So it is really with great pleasure, not only pleasure and an honor to have Chris Salcedo here again, but also I want to invite him to come back as a sign of hope for the entire traditional Catholic movement, and of course for the Catholic Identity Conference, to say, look at this, guys, we're not alone, we're not alone. The fight goes on, never give up, never give up. So with that, I want to welcome our first speaker today, Chris Salcedo from Newsmax.
Oh no! Stop! No, that's way too much. Look, first off, since the last time I was here, and this is the case right now, as Mr. Matt was telling you, I speak before hundreds of thousands of people every single day. I am more nervous coming to talk to you about articles of faith. Now, and I've got to say about Newsmax, not only am I allowed to talk about articles of faith, I'm encouraged by did you know how rare it is in media to be encouraged by those who are your bosses to not only am I going to allow you to talk openly about your Catholic faith, about Christianity, about the battles that we are in, but I'm going to encourage you. My boss actually feeds guests to me. So it is quite a blessing. I've been in media a long time, and this is the first job I'm actually have been in media where they say, no, talk about articles of faith. Just might save us. And it just might. So yes, the reason I get so nervous about talking about articles of faith, I talk about government and the state of our country every day, and it's just a matter of course. But when I start talking about our faith, our religion, the basis of our whole sense of being, there's a little more weightiness to it. So this is something you don't want to get wrong. So it is great to be back here. I'm going to share a story with you about what I've been doing since the last time I was here. Radio show, the podcast, the television show, it's all moving. And I got invited in my home state of Texas, the great state of Texas, to a gathering. It was called, initially it's called Faith, Family, Freedom Fest. So that's a lot of F's in there. They shortened it for the hashtag. Now they call it Faith Fest. And it was non-denominationals, people of different faiths all coming together. Their purpose for gathering was to reaffirm their Christian faith and to set themselves out on a course to correct things that are going wrong in the country, that Christians have an obligation, that people of faith have an obligation to get involved in their politics, to get involved in their cities, their towns, their states, their country. So when I accepted to go there I did the live broadcast from their radio and television, and then I looked on my calendar, I said, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to speak to the folks at the Catholic Identity Conference. I circled that because my experience with the individuals of other faiths, other Christians, and seeing their activism, I'm saying, man, I am going to go and speak before a whole bunch of people who are activated as well, but in a different manner. Not that we divorce ourselves from the politics as Catholics, and the Catholic Identity Conference certainly doesn't do that, but we have a greater emphasis here. How many of you know The Mandalorian? I know it's Disney, and I'm not a big fan these days, trust me. How many of you? I have been trying to convince the priest in my parish to give a speech on, there's a phrase in The Mandalorian, which is, by the way, Star Wars lore, which says, this is the way. It's a code of conduct this particular character lives by, and a sect of people lives by. And I've been trying to get my priest, can you do a homily about Catholicism? This is the way. And the Mandalorian is very dedicated, lives his life passionate to a point where there's part of the code. Don't ask me to explain it. It takes too long. They don't take their helmets off for anybody else except for family. But they live by that. And I can't tell you the reason why. It's a Mandalorian thing. But we know why we do what we do as Catholics, don't we? And I think I would be remiss if I didn't include that concept as part of the speech here. This is the way. This is who we are. And isn't it time we got a little more passionate about that, to gather, to not only know and understand our own faith, but to take it out to the world. The evangelization, I know we've had this since our catechism. We've got to evangelize, but I think the state of our world really does show us why that's so important now, doesn't it? The state of our world and this country, a country that was founded, we're told, on the principles of God-given rights. Now, when Michael and we were discussing what this talk was going to be about, we came up with ecclesiastical treason, how left-wing forces threaten Christ's church on earth. That was the topic. And it was a natural melding, of course, of what I do, holding government accountable, trying to anyway, holding elected officials accountable, and some observations, a lot of parallels I've been seeing, sadly, with the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, the leaders of the Catholic Church. And I don't know how many of you have been sensing this same thing, but there's going to be a theme. Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. Not only in the nation that we call the United States of America, but also with the foundations of our Catholic Church. Maybe I didn't phrase that correctly. The foundations of our Catholic Church are perfect because they were given to us by Christ. Those who have been put in charge of implementing that vision are far from perfect. In fact, some might rationalize they're playing for the other side. At least if my observations meet yours, and I think they might. So, as some of you who watch me on Newsmax, you might know I talk about political things. By the way, as a talk show host, and I'm going to try to leave 15 minutes at the end just so in case you guys have a question or two for me, you can take the talk show host out of the studio. Can't take the studio out of the talk show host. Because I do like the interaction and the back and forth. And I was worried first, do I have enough time to fill, do I have enough material to fill the hour? And then all of a sudden I started, in preparation, look at this. I start writing stuff. Oh, I've got to tell them this. I got to tell them that. I got to make sure I tell them this as an example. So, what turned out to be, man, can I really keep it under 45 minutes? And it's like, oh, I'm going to be able to squeeze it all in 45 minutes. So I talk about political things. I talk about how government is failing us as a people. It is failing to meet its duty, and I think there is a case that the hierarchy of the church is suffering from the same illness, and might I suggest for the same reason. Let me bring up some examples from government. How many of you are familiar with the term Alejandro Mayorkas, this gentleman, Alejandro Mayorkas? Alejandro Mayorkas is a rather failed individual. He is laughably in charge of the Department of Homeland Security for our country. The man who is the enforcer of allowing the most egregious display of lawlessness to ever impact a country. At least over in Europe, they had the imprimatur of, well, this is legal. I mean, we're just going to invite everybody in. And they actually had a vote. We still have not been that far gone over in Europe as to call the massive imposition and collision course of cultures by those in charge, seeming, what could go wrong? We're going to plop a whole bunch of people down who have no basis nor commonality with a whole bunch of other people, and everything's going to be fine. Say the individuals who are protected by men and women with guns, as they work, by the way, to take away our right of self-defense in that same regard. So Alejandro Mayorkas was impeached. It took the Republicans long enough to do it. He was impeached. And then, of course, the natural course of impeachment is you get a trial, correct? Because that's only the way we've done it for the last 200 plus years in the United States. But not this time. Not this time. No. Because there was another party in charge, the Democrats, over in the Senate, they said, hey, you know what? We're just going to skip the trial. And the Republicans said, okay. And I'm over on Newsmax going, okay? Everybody's okay with this? We're going to destroy over 250 years of precedents in the United States, and everybody's just okay? And where is Alejandro Mayorkas today? He's doing pretty much the same stuff he's been doing. Disadvantaging you and me. Harming you and me. Harming this country. The Secret Service. All of a sudden we're told, I'm sorry, we can't protect President Trump. Just President Trump? All of a sudden, after decades and decades and decades, now you can't protect the designee, and it happens to be just Trump. Yeah, that's pretty much what we're saying. President Trump holding a rally either yesterday or today. There's so many. I mean, he's busy. But I've got to move it inside. Got to move it inside because we can't protect you any longer. But what about the 20, 30, 50,000 people out there that want to hear him speak? Well, tough luck, I guess. And we're supposed to say, like the Republicans, okay. So as those in power have strayed from the American guiding principles, I see those we rely on for spiritual guidance, straying away from our Catholic principles. Here's what I know, and this is part of the stuff I wrote down that I had to get to you. I don't think we need theology degrees to be good Catholics. Just the reason I believe we don't need to have law degrees to be good Americans. We know intuitively there's something wrong. By how we were raised, about the foundational principles of the United States of America, the foundational principles of our Catholic faith, something is wrong. Our guide as Christians, of course, the Bible and Jesus Christ. Our guide as Americans, the U.S. Constitution. And those who are in charge, that we have put in charge of keeping faith with those traditions, they are turning their backs in front of all of us, turning their backs on those traditions. And everybody's supposed to be okay with it. Is it just me? Or have those that we have chosen to shepherd us through our American experience, have they decidedly said, yeah, American, I don't think we want to be that anymore? I am fond of saying the Democrat Party no longer wishes to be American. And I firmly believe that they don't. They want to turn us into something else, maybe something that's pseudo-European. I don't quite know or understand, or maybe I do, and I'm afraid to admit it, what their actual plan is for us. Here's what I do know, that anything that is resembling being American is not part of their plan. Because the U.S. Constitution is in their way. Free speech, the rule of law, elected officials who put their voters first, the citizens of this country first and not foreign nationals, those are now all of a sudden foreign concepts. And I'm told as a conservative, you just don't understand. Americans know there's something wrong with a government that betrays its very reason for being. Catholics know there's something wrong with a church that's doing very much the same thing. Have you noticed that our faith leaders, who should use the Bible, who should use Christ's teachings, the reward of eternal life, as their motivations, their whole MO, modus operandi, their whole reason for doing what they do, they have removed their gaze from all of that. And they have put removed their gaze from heaven, where all of us would anticipate that our faith leaders' gaze should be. And they're paying attention to other stuff. They're paying attention to things of this world, of politics, to man-made global warming, which is a religion in and of itself, is it not? Isn't man-made global warming one heck of an article of faith? And as the same individuals who betray our trust in our government and stray away from the Constitution, I think our faith leaders are doing very much the same thing as they're straying away from the foundational principles of what we were taught, what we all grew up with. And again, you can't shake that feeling that something's not right. Our founders' vision is being distorted and perverted and ignored. God's word is being distorted, perverted, and ignored, all to advance, I believe, the same evil ideology. Cardinal Wilton Gregory. I don't even have to finish the sentence and you all know. Here is a man who I think it is safe to say does not hold in high regard the Eucharist. Because, as you all very well know, that individuals who claim to be Catholics, like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and John Kerry and others like them, Mr. Gregory said he didn't feel the need to deny communion to those individuals. I mean, what's 66 million babies slaughtered in the womb to a cardinal of the Catholic Church? What's it to him? Just a rounding error, perhaps. Or maybe it's what you and I know what that is. It's an atrocity. It's a crime against humanity, a crime against God, which has been the result since this, again, thank you to President Trump, it's now been reversed, but since the Roe versus Wade decision in 1973. 66 million, that's a conservative estimate too. Meanwhile, Archbishop Cordileone has passed over. Father Frank Pavone, a priest who has dedicated his life to the preservation of those babies, is defrocked. And of course, Bishop Strickland, demoted. what's their crime? Being Catholic. Their crime is being Catholic. And they're being demoted, denigrated, marginalized, and sidelined by the seat of Catholicism. Much the same is happening in our government. Dedicated public servants who believe in a government of, by, and for the people. They're being shown the door. If you're an individual in, let's say, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who a man stepped in front of Congress and testified that he was being retaliated against because, hey, the FBI's been breaking the law. And they've been, instead of protecting Americans, they've been targeting Americans. And then the Inspector General of the FBI, the Department of Justice, says, oh, well, we've discovered that your supervisors have been improperly retaliating against you for telling the truth. And they've been making your life a living hell. And the Inspector General says, well, that's a bit of an issue. That's a problem. It's an ignorance thing. They didn't realize that it was wrong. You didn't realize it was wrong to punish one of your subordinates. By the way, we have laws to protect people, whistleblower laws to protect people. But guess what? Those laws are meaningless when you're a leftist and you're trying to damage a country and change it forever. And by the way, the rules and the laws that govern us as Catholics, passed on by a much higher authority, those too are being ignored because leftists need to change the Catholic faith because we are in their way. In my mind, it starts with Pope Francis and ends with Pope Francis. My last conversation with the Catholic Identity Conference, it's centered around the Pope's love and admiration and obsession with communism. And if you look at his writings, you look at what he's done in the past, he just can't get himself enough of communism. For those of you, I know this is probably, I'm preaching to the choir here, who you probably are all well aware, communism is an economic system, stripping away private property, stripping away a free enterprise system and replacing it with complete government control of everything, businesses, from manufacturing to distribution. More harmful than the economic system is the government system that oozes from that economic system. Totalitarianism, a loss of basic humanity, the destruction of God-given rights, and our ability to worship our Lord and Savior. And Pope Francis appears to be on board. For some of you, I know this is, it's elementary. But the truth is being rewritten for our children. I want to tell you about an experience that I had doing research to tell you guys some of this stuff. The search engines that we have now, Google, I think you all know, are aware, heavily influenced by Communist China. Even DuckDuckGo, the privacy search engine. That I was looking up information I knew was available. I had read it, I had studied it. I needed to refresh my memory. In the process of looking for this stuff, I was astonished at what your children, and maybe some of you, have been exposed to. You can't find stuff anymore if you're critical of commies. You can't find stuff anymore if you want to bring accountability to the Vatican, if you want to question the rather left-wing and inexplicable activities of the church or of the government. You can't find stuff anymore. I don't know if you've noticed, but give it a try. Try looking up criticism of authority and see how far you get. That was just an experience I wanted to make sure you guys knew that I had. Let me give you an example from history. This is something I was able to find. And I remember reading something about this, so that's why I knew. You wouldn't believe, it took me about 30 minutes to find this example. And I had I had to put in so much stuff in the search engine trying to figure out ways to trick it to give me what I wanted, because it was trying to hide the information from me. History lesson. The godless 5-year plan launched in 1928 by Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, gave local cells of anti-religious organizations, the League of Militant Atheists, gave them new tools to de-establish religion. This is a matter of history. Isn't it a wonder why the left wing has taken over our education system? They're terribly afraid our children are going to learn from history, so they suppress it in advancement of their own goals. But Stalin empowered there was actually such a thing, the League of Militant Atheists. Sound familiar to anybody here? A couple of years ago, BLM and Antifa rampaging through our streets, threatening, intimidating, coercing Americans with violence, burning, looting, beating, killing in our streets. Unleashed by what? An equally diabolical left wing in this country. So churches were closed. They were stripped of their property, as well as any educational welfare activities that went beyond a simple liturgy, one that the state would tolerate. Ronald Reagan, in what would become a precursor to conservative talk radio, and thank goodness he did, talked about the left wing's attack on God in the former Soviet Union. In an effort to resist this totalitarianism, Christians banded together in secret. This is all a matter of history I'm sure you're all familiar with. Communist leaders decided to secularize everything. Again, sound familiar? Communist leaders took the Ukrainian Christmas carol, I'm probably going to butcher this, Nova Radist Stala. Joyous news has come to us. That was the name of the hymn. And it started like this. The joyous news has come, which never was before. Over a cave above a manger, a bright star has lit the world, where Jesus was born from a virgin maiden. Pretty much the story we've all come to know and appreciate, correct? Well, that's not good enough for communists. They feared the public outcry for an outright ban of Christmas, so they decided to do a little rewriting. The first version, because as you know, leftists are very patient. The first rewriting went like this. The joyous news has come, which never was before. A red star with 5 tails has brightly lit the world. The second rewrite went further. As I said, the commies are patient. The joyous news has come, which never was before. Long-awaited star of freedom lit the skies in October. That was the month of the revolution. Where formerly lived the kings and had the roots their nobles, there today with simple folks Lenin's glory hovers. That's the Soviet Union's celebration of Christmas. Former Soviet Union eventually began banning Christmas commemorations. St. Nicholas was replaced with somebody called Ded Moroz, Grandfather Frost. Just as our schools have replaced Christmas break with winter break. Just as our schools have replaced Easter break with spring break, which has become a celebration of debauchery and hedonism, yes? The Stalinist creation of Santa Claus wears a red cap and a beard, but he delivers presents to good little boys and girls on New Year's Eve. Hey, celebrate the New Year's Eve. That's what Christmas is really all about. A brand new year, right? Say the Marxists. Thank goodness there was a United States of America at that time to push back on that type of propaganda. Thank God we had a Vatican at the time that would push back on that propaganda. Guess what? We don't have that anymore. How many of you were tempted to say it, well, Soviet Union, it could happen there. Sure. Could happen in communist China, sure, but it couldn't happen in the West, can't happen here. I already brought the examples of, Christmas and Easter, anything that's precious to us, to Christendom, being banned from the public sphere. In 2022, in jolly old England, the lyrics of the traditional Christmas carol were altered to honor, quote, the queer in questioning. An alternative version of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen sparked a fresh debate, which many of you would say, debate, really? Sacrilege is now a debate. Yeah, this was the All Saints Holy Trinity Church Choir in Loughborough. Yeah, I had to consult a professional. In Loughborough, performed an updated version of the classic Christmas hymn. The new lyrics were more inclusive, honoring women and queer people within the carol in the apparent ode to the LGBTQ ABCDFG cultural Marxist crowd. An alternate version of the Christmas carol sang like this: God rest you queer and questioning. Your anxious hearts be still. Believe that you are deeply known and part of God's goodwill. Pope John Paul II teamed up with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady from the United Kingdom, and they were the triumvirate of righteousness when I was growing up. And they stood against the purveyors and the pushers of this idiocy, this moronic contortion that the left wing does. And again, we don't have that. I cited these examples. Are you kidding me? Really? I really got to go fast then. And here I was worried I wasn't going to be able to speak in 45 and put a talk show host on. Look, it's an example of how the woke left wing works. It's not good enough for equality. They don't want to coexist with us. That's one of the biggest lies, one of the biggest fallacies. They want to destroy everything we are. They don't seek an accommodation. If they did, they wouldn't be out in our streets rioting. They wouldn't be changing rules and ignoring laws. They wouldn't be committing crimes against humanity and saying, well, it's the government. How many of you are familiar with our illegal immigration crisis in this country? I made mention of this earlier. An estimated 15 million illegal aliens have been allowed to break into this country against our law. Nothing good ever comes of that. But Joe Biden has been funded every step of the way by his political party and a certain number of Republicans. For all of their caterwauling, for all of their protestations, for all of their jumping on my program and all the news programs on Fox and other right-leaning outlets, the Republicans have not stopped one illegal alien from transgressing into the United States with the cultures that I mentioned. In fact, there are those within our own church who say breaking the law is meritorious. And our money that we give in the collection plate is going to an effort in my home state of Texas where illegal aliens were brought in knowingly infected with a virus, that what I not so lovingly call the China virus, and were allowed to spread that virus to our people. Now, I don't know on what planet that is compassion, but leftists did it to us, and Republicans fully funded it. Here's another little statistic that you won't hear any of these individuals, unless they're confronted on my program by it, talking about in Congress. Nice little byproduct of ignoring your laws. 320,000 illegal alien children have been delivered by our own government into sex slavery, forced labor, and other atrocities. You all paid for it. They did it in your name. And I asked, Congressman Comer came on my program 2 days ago. Hey, any one of your colleagues say, when our own government starts becoming a pimp in the sex slave trade, did any one of you Republicans say, that's kind of a red line I don't think we ought to be crossing? Did any one of you stop? No. They just voted again, another fake budget continuing resolution to give the Democrats everything they wanted to continue this atrocity. Think about the lives of these children. They have been delivered by the U.S. government into a living hell under the guise of compassion. This is what left-wing compassion looks like. Yes, and some bishops are helping them. And then you've got Il Papa, Pope Francis. I'm going to skip ahead because what Pope Francis has done, just the other day, he did a tour around Asia. How many of you saw this? Do you know what Il Papa said about communist China? Il Papa said of communist China that they are the great hope for Catholics. For Catholics. The man who has abandoned Cardinal Zen, not to mention an entire nation of people to this depravity. I'm feverishly looking for the quote because, again, I wouldn't want to misquote the Vicar of Christ. But you guys can look it up on your devices. China is the great hope. Let's keep in mind what China has been doing, my friends. China is enslaving, currently as you and I speak, 3 million Uyghur Muslims. Because, slavery is very Catholic, isn't it? Isn't that the hope of every Catholic, enslaving populations? Oh, no, wait a minute. That wasn't in my catechism. China is the architect of forced abortions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Catholic faith stands staunchly opposed to wanton slaughter of children in the womb by choice. I can imagine we can have at least a little more condemnation for forced abortions. Can't we? But the Vatican, under the leadership of Pope Francis, says that China is the great hope for Catholics. A betrayer by any description. Just as much a betrayer of our faith as Joe Biden is to the Constitution and Barack Obama is to the Constitution. So as we talk about ecclesiastical treason, I am observing these betrayals of our sensibilities, of our faith, of who we are as a people in service to a totalitarian power that does not have God at its center, does not have freedom at its center. It has the other guy at its center and tyranny at its center, delivering us to this. And I believe we should oppose this with all of our might. We are enjoined by Christ Jesus to oppose evil wherever we find it. So I will wrap up, and I've at least got to get one question in. So this is the stuff I wanted to make sure I told you. The good news. They lose. The attacks on Christ's church on earth are happening from outside and inside this church, but they cannot prevail because we know how it all ends. But it does not mean they will not try. The hubris of Satan, I mean, think about it. Satan is a rather intelligent being, knows that it's futile to go up against God, does it anyway. So too is it with the left. So too is it with communists. So too is it with Marxists. They know their strategy, their prescription, their worldview is a loser for all of mankind. They're going to do it anyway. And there will be casualties on both sides every step of the way. Our Blessed Mother said, "Whoever shall faithfully serve me by the recitation of the rosary shall receive signal graces." In other words, we will know evil when we see it. My friends, we are seeing it. You don't need to be a theologian to recognize evil. You don't need to have a law degree to recognize that what is happening in our nation is not American. The woke is perverting what it is to be an American, a nation founded on the principles of protecting God-given rights. And the woke is targeting the over 2,000 years tradition and scriptural teachings in the Catholic Church. Teaching that has provided a guide for mankind and has done so much to ease the suffering of our imperfect world. You and I are the caretakers of that. You and I, even though the times are going to get tough, and you all sense it, I could, as you were all groaning and finishing my sentences before I completed them. As I said, I'm preaching to the choir. We do not have to accept their perversions. We do not have to accept their redefinitions. We do not have to accept their betrayal. We do not have to accept their treason against the foundational principles that have done so much to fulfill His will. What we have to do is remember exactly who it is we're playing for and why. Okay, I've got to get one question in. I've got 2 minutes. Great. That's great. Okay, well, show of hands. I'm just going to go. Ma'am, since you're right in front of me, just stand up and be really loud.
This isn't actually a question. It's more of a request.
A request.
You have a great platform. The destruction of the Catholic Church was methodically done.
The destruction of the Catholic Church was methodically done.
And the first thing...
Oh, she's got a mic.
The first thing that they did, and I
Yes.
saw the list, do away with all devotions to St. Michael.
Yes.
Because he is the protector of the church.
Yes.
Can you do something? You've got a platform to say, pray to St. Michael. He is our protector. He is the defender of the church. Bring him back.
I
In the
can.
mainstream media, St. Michael.
I can. Now, I'm in Texas, and I have a parish. Upon hearing about the elimination of the St. Michael prayer, my bishop said, "Hey, guess what? We're doing the St. Michael prayer after every Mass." So, whereas one voice on television could make a difference, your voices to your clergy, to those in your church, mean more. And how's that? Liz Wheeler does. Liz Wheeler is saying that St. Michael. Wow, wow. You know what? I might have to start doing that in the podcast. I might have to. Liz, have any of you ever watched or met Liz Wheeler? I mean, talk about a force of nature. I mean, you had Candace Owens on the stage last night. Forces of nature. Okay, I know. Can I just cheat one more? Okay, thank you. Sir, go ahead. Are Catholics morally obligated to vote for President Trump? Folks, fight, 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 fight. As your liberty-loving Latino and somebody I would say who probably has his mind toward heaven more than our pontiff does, I would say of any American, vote your values. And I can tell you right now that the party of abortion, the party of lawlessness, the party of totalitarianism, which is the Democrat Party, I can't find one single value that aligns with being Catholic, that aligns with being a Democrat. However, I do see with President Trump a man who gave us back our voice, returned the debate about life in this country. It wasn't just 9 people in robes that decided. Now we get to have that debate. I mentioned Europe earlier. They had the debate. Our side lost. I think it's up to us to make sure we don't lose here. I have gone over, and here I thought I wasn't going to have enough. Guys, thank you so much. It has been a blessing to be among all of you.